All right, welcome to Imagine Blue. And at this point, we've all seen the Batman, some of us multiple times.
Yeah, twice.
We have, in the midst of this discussion about is the Batman as good as the Dark Knight, or
No.
which one is the best Batman depiction that we've seen so far, we kind of have yet to discuss the
Criticisms.
The criticisms.
slash
Yeah,
criticism.
the
So you like
critiques
mix them
slash
together.
criticisms that people have levied against this
Levied, huh?
movie. Yes.
People
Yes.
lobbied against it.
Basically, there are a lot of people who do have some opinions about this movie that are pretty negative of it. So we're gonna talk about it, discuss. What do you guys think that any of these criticisms have merit? And we'll go from there. Yeah. So one of the big things that obviously one of the biggest things is this was a 3-hour movie. It's a long movie, and
That's a fair criticism.
You think that's a fair criticism?
I think it's a pretty fair criticism.
Explain.
Okay, so I remember
Because
you
it
saying.
was 3 hours.
I think
It's a true statement.
I think you might have said this too, Crystal. But for me, it was like it felt like they had fake out endings where
Yeah.
I thought the movie was gonna end, but it just
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
And to me, that made the beats and the pacing a little bit dragged out.
Yeah.
When you sort of expect something to happen and then it doesn't necessarily happen, it kind of, at least for this movie in particular, the first time watching it, I was kind of like, whoa, what the heck? It's still going.
Yeah.
I'm curious because I know the feeling that you're talking about, but I'm curious where that comes from because at those moments in the movie, there were still a lot of unresolved plot
Yeah,
points.
that's true.
And I was in the movie, I was like, okay, I get the feeling that it's coming to an end, but there's still a ton of stuff that they haven't addressed yet. So I kind of like knew that
Yeah.
they can't end it
I mean,
here.
Well, it comes from the fact that, like, I don't know, they could have done a little bit better, like, editing maybe, because there were some times where, like, a beat would happen and it felt like there was, like, a feeling of finality to it for some reason. Like, I don't know, that
When
was just
Falcone died.
Yeah,
that's
like
a
that.
big one.
There was just like a vibe about it, and I think that was just like some funky wonky editing or something, or directing. No idea. And then the next time you feel like it ended, you get like what felt like. I think it's because we've been so primed with Marvel. To when we see something like an after credit and it's like a teaser, that's what the Joker Riddler scene felt like in the asylum. That felt like another fake out ending to me. And then then you have the last bit with the after the flood too. You think that after Bruce's little voiceover speech that's the end, but then you have like the final goodbye between him and Catwoman. So that felt like is this the end? Is it? Like every time I'm just like kind of hanging on, like trying to figure out if like it's the real ending or not, and I don't know why. I think it's just maybe like an editing thing.
Yeah. Even to add on to that, the part when Batman's talking to Riddler and they're in the Arkham Asylum, that part kind of felt like that kind of also
Another
felt
ending.
like it could have been an ending. I mean, again, obviously, when you realize he realized it wasn't Bruce, that's when I realized, okay, there's probably more to it. But that almost made it come off to like maybe that was the point of the film, where it's like the point of the film is you think he's trying to solve, because at that point you think, oh, was he just trying to solve Batman? He was trying to figure out who Batman was, but then he goes to the point saying, that's the point. It's not that I'm trying to solve Batman. The point. So it's like the lessons. I think really what it comes down to is the lessons. Because usually lessons or themes are usually played at the ending of a story. So at that point, they kind of revealed all the lessons and themes out there.
It did feel kind of like out of sorts too. And circling back to what you saying about, like it definitely couldn't be an ending because like things were unresolved. But after, there's a lot of stuff that's still unresolved. Like some of the stuff that was added into it for whatever reason, like just kind of opened up more, like another can of worms, basically. Like like Joker Riddler, the final goodbye with Catwoman, like she's obviously gonna be in Bloodhaven, like which is not that far away, and like there's still Penguin to worry about and a bunch of other stuff. So it's like
I think the difference is that those are open-ended like threads as opposed to established plot lines that have not come to a conclusion yet. So that you still have, at the part where Falcone dies, Riddler's still out there.
Yeah.
And, we still haven't gotten that. And there's other moments where it's like, okay, we still need to get to an end of this story. So that's how I experienced the movie. But I get it that like with other people watching it, they're like, oh, I feel like this is the ending, but it's not yet.
Yeah,
It's just a feeling. Like I can't explain. I'm sure
I
like
get
there's
it.
explanations online, but it's just.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys felt it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I
but
think for me, a lot of it had to do because at some point it felt like I was watching an anime where it's like, you know how like every character has their task, and then there's some like emotional arc. How like for example, them accomplishing this task has to do with their like past trauma. I feel like the way this movie was going, there was so much of that, which on one hand it makes you more emotional in the character. So there is a advantage to that. But on the other hand, it just felt like, okay, do I really need to know this person's story and all that kind of thing? Like, I could cut this out and this still would have worked. You know what I'm saying? So I think that was what for me with the whole length, where it just felt like I was seeing more story with a character, which again, it did make me engage with the story, but at the same time, it's like, yo, you can just cut that, you know?
Yeah.
So
I can
that's
see
what I
that.
felt with the 3 hours.
Exactly. I think if you have like a movie that's going to be 3 hours and you choose to not trim the fat in certain places, like every piece needs to be not necessarily perfect, but it needs to like make sense and feel like it needed to be in there. And I don't know, because everything we're bringing up about like it seeming like, oh, this could be the end, that could be the end. This is all in like the third act, which is like another big criticism that people have been saying is like generally everyone thinks that it falls apart in the third act, which is like a really general statement, but I get it. I think, but like,
it is.
yeah, but I get it. I mean, tonally and pacing wise, like things are really different in the third act. Like it kind of like does a little bit of like a 180 because it goes from like a whole like film noir type thing, and then it culminates into like what's supposed to be like the crescendo, but then it kind of gets. It's a lot, really. Like that's everything that's happening in like the big final scene at Gotham Square Garden.
Yeah.
And I can see where it's coming from. I don't fully agree. I was like pretty much engaged the whole time in the movie, and I like the movie a lot. But I think there is merit to it. Like I can see it.
Do you think part of it is we have expectations as just a general movie going audience in 2022? We have expectations of how stories in movies like this should flow, and when the movie doesn't necessarily adhere to that flow, it kind of throws us off.
It could be that's a fair point you can make, that flow is like an example of that. I think it's just that I think it also comes down to because like, and I guess to go get to your argument, I mean, if you look at this movie as 4 acts, which that's what this movie technically is, it's 4 acts. You can kind of see why there's like more to it.
Do you want to explain that 4 acts thing?
4 acts is just basically what a 4 act is like. It's basically like if the second act is like the main confrontation, the third act is just basically a continuation. So it's basically the second act is 2 parts. Instead of looking at it as 1 part, you look at it 2 parts. Like first part of the second act is just a character going through the trial tribulation to reach their goal. The second part is just the consequences of that goal, and then obviously the last act is the aftermath, basically. So that's the way you can look at it. So if you looked at it from a 4-act structure, you can still see, like, I could still see why it's this long, but and that's why people get the argument, well, it falls apart in the third act, but if you see it in the 4 act, then it's not really. But,
is it a 4 act, or is it like a fake out of like?
Yeah, that's true.
That's what we were saying.
Yeah, essentially. But even going back to that third, even if we want to look at it from a 4-act structure, it's like, again, going back to flow and build up. At some point, there needs to be a proper payoff, and if we feel like we're being kind of delayed or the payoff is not being done right, it does kind of ruin. Like, yeah, it's flow, but it plays importance in the movie.
Yeah, like, is the payoff worth that roller coaster that we went on? Basically, I feel
Set
like
up some payoffs.
yeah.
Storytelling 101.
You know what happens when things get like dragged down. You're like, oh,
yeah.
like,
At some point, we
Attack on
question
Titan
it.
season 4.
Yeah, exactly. At some point we start questioning. Yeah, at some point we start questioning it.
I don't know if it's that bad.
Like, yeah, for sure.
It's just an example of a bad way of doing it.
Yeah, but did this talking about it also reminds me, like, is the payoff worth it, or does it feel like almost too unfinished? And this is kind of like another another example of this would be like Dune. A lot of people's biggest problem with Dune is they're like, oh, it felt so unfinished. And I feel like you could apply maybe like it's like a similar kind of criticism with what's happening with like the end of the Batman movie, maybe.
That's interesting because with Dune, it's almost the opposite, and I think it goes to the story because like a lot of people are like, oh, Dune doesn't have an ending, whereas with Batman, they're like, oh, it has too many
There's
endings.
5 endings.
Yeah, it's fine.
So
Yeah.
it's almost, and they're both roughly the same length, right? I think
Yeah.
Dune is 2 hours and something.
Yeah, I suppose that's why Dune is a lot more forgivable because like it doesn't have that ending, so the payoff is saved for the later movie. While Batman, you know, it gives you like mini payoffs every here and then, but it isn't quite like that. Boom, that big payoff. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like small little
Oh.
payoffs.
Okay.
It's like you're eating a meal, and then it's like you expect that, and you get like, and then it's done.
Okay, Chuku.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I understand it. But for me personally, it doesn't bother me as much.
Yeah, I still like the movie for sure.
I
It's
mean,
like,
it doesn't ruin the enjoyment, but it does make it like it's that moment where you feel like this could have been better.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
No, I loved.
But the enjoyment's there.
Yeah, I love the movie, but there were just some moments where I had to like scratch my head. I was like, that was an interesting choice.
But like, yeah, I mean, I guess I just like I imagine what would have changed, like what would have been different to make that better, like the way
yeah,
that
that's a
the,
long discussion. Right?
the Falcone death scene felt like an ending, like. How do you change that so that it happens and it doesn't feel like an ending?
I think one way that could have happened is when he died immediately, they literally go after. Like they like it's a new scene where they're chasing after the guy, as opposed to it just being this like
he goes back to the apartment,
dramatic moment,
and he's like looking in the apartment again, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. So it could be
I
a
think
pace shape.
they discover the.
Yeah, they did
shooter,
discover it. Yeah,
the shooter room, and then they find Riddler.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of pretty soon after that.
They do, but the way it goes back to feeling, right? Because the way it's felt is like, because again, I saw the movie yesterday.
Yeah.
The way it felt, it was like we're all just kind of at odds, and I get it. They want to feel that emotional impact that Falcone's dead. We're all at odds. We're all like this, and then it's like, and then they look at the shooter. He runs away, and it's just. And then it kind of drags to the next scene.
It slows down again.
Yeah, it slows down again. As opposed if it was more momentum.
They could have kept the momentum. Yeah. That is a good point.
They could
have kept the momentum, go straight into building that crescendo at Gotham Square Garden. Also, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Continue.
Well, okay, this is kind of segueing into another like part of the endings. Okay. But like this is my opinion. I think that the Joker Riddler teaser scene should have been not
Cut.
in there. I don't even as much as yeah.
It was trash.
Really, you think so? Because I remember you said you kind of liked it, like when you.
No, I liked it when I thought it was something.
Yeah, you thought it was the wrong person.
I thought it was the wrong person. When I found out it was the Joker, I'm like, what is this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's funny because you're the only person that thought that.
But I was like, oh, because this would be a smart thing to do as opposed to what they actually did.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I guess it's not just my opinion, but I think that should have been taken out.
Yeah,
I don't even and. It would have been cool as like an after credit, but I don't also need after credits. Like I don't like, you know, we're going to see him later on. Like there's no need to like the Joker. Everyone knows who the Joker is. Like we already expect him to be in the other movies. No need to like give us that when it's not really enhancing the current story.
I almost feel like it's a bad thing because they might set up an expectation that might not come true because is Riddler going to team up with Joker? Like, is Riddler going to be in the next movie?
Exactly.
With Joker? They sort of set that expectation so that they have to do that now. Otherwise, that scene makes no sense.
That scene kind of made it a little bloated. Yeah. That could have trimmed the fat, could have taken it out. Going
back to the whole multiple endings criticism, one of the other movies that I hear that criticism applied to a lot is The Return of the King, the Lord of the Rings Return of the King, which is one of the best movies ever created. But no, people criticize that movie because it has a ton of endings. But I think the difference between this movie and that movie in those endings is that, and you brought this up, where at the point where in the Batman we feel like it's starting to end, there's still a ton of rising action that still needs to happen. Yeah. And so you have this sort of this sort of climax that slows down, and then the rising action is inhibited by that cool down from this pseudo climax that we just felt. Whereas in The Return of the King, all of those endings happen on the falling action.
Yeah.
And so it's all an aftermath of the major climax that everything has been built up to, and you have that consistent momentum towards this climax, and then it happens, and then you have the falling action, which has these multiple endings that people cry about.
And that's also the last movie in the series.
Exactly.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah, which makes sense. So, but I can see that being a problem with the Batman, where you have that, but it's interrupting the rising action on the way to the final climax.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can get behind that.
I think we nailed it. I think that was the problem.
It's sort of like
no, it's great to like now verbalize it and unpack
it's like we figured it out together.
Yes, we
it's
solved
like
the
all of our
problem.
thoughts
It's like
together.
a Batman therapy session.
Yes.
Because
I
I
like
know, I was like, something about it wasn't right, and like now
we articulated
now we-
perfectly.
now we know.
Yeah.
Also, this is not related to the movie whatsoever, but we're all wearing different colors that are like somewhat the primary plus RGB.
Oh, perfect.
Green for Riddler.
wow.
Green for Riddler.
Okay.
Kind of.
I mean, is there any other criticism that we have to address, or that's mainly?
I mean,
Two criticisms, but it's a big criticism.
Yeah.
Like you want the ending to be good of like whatever story, and you want the payoff to be worth it. So when it's not, it's
a problem.
palpable. Like you feel it. You know.
Yeah. We talked about the Joker thing. That was trash.
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's
Anything else? Is that it? Or?
I mean, there are other people who feel like Batman was too emo.
Okay.
Mm,
I think so. I don't know. I have a different opinion on that. I kind of like that Bruce Wayne was a little bit more, I guess, depressing, just because it's like he's been Batman for a year, and it's like he doesn't know what he's doing is right or wrong, and it's kind of this thing where he's just kind of immersed himself in the job, and it's kind of it plays to this whole Batman, like us seeing more Batman as opposed to us seeing a lot Bruce Wayne. So it's like it kind of plays to it. So I don't know. Maybe it's, to me, that's an aesthetic complaint. Not, I would say
that's a personal taste thing.
that's more of that than it is.
Because there's so many also different version of Batman that like
it's hard to say that it's not coming.
Yeah, like it could be coming from like a valid place, but there's so many iterations that it's like, you know, that's not really fair to like criticize that portrayal. But like a lot of people are saying it's like also like the best Batman portrayal, so I don't think that's a huge criticism. Like some people,
I think it's probably the best Batman portrayal.
Here's one complaint I have is like, take out like the Joker Riddler scene and add more scenes with Alfred, because I didn't really connect.
Yeah.
I didn't connect with this movie's Alfred. So when, you know, that I told you guys, like the hospital scene didn't really hit for me. There was good dialogue between them that it felt like exposition though to me, because it was like all verbal stuff, like barely, you know, got to know Alfred outside of his kind of more calculating nature. Like we could tell like how helpful he is to Bruce, basically getting to the bottom of things in the detective side of things. But like other than that, like I wish there was just more emotional stuff, like just subtle things, really. Like anything else, any tiny morsel would have been appreciated.
Yeah, the small criticism towards Alfred was that as much as it is emotional that he got attacked, I feel like for him to survive that was a little bit contrived to me. Same with the woman, the mayor woman who she got shot. I'm just like, they showed her literally got shot chest, but yet she's just like,
and she's like in water. It should be like getting the blood out faster.
But she just is alive. So that was a little bit contrived. But again, I still love the movie. Like I still enjoy it. I think, to be honest, so far it's the most enjoyable Batman movie I've seen. So
interesting.
I don't know if you guys watch How It Should Have Ended, like on YouTube.
I didn't watch it for this one.
Do you want me to avoid?
No, you can.
No, tell it.
Okay,
I
so
wanna hear it.
there's a scene where Alfred sees the Riddler note for Bruce Wayne's eyes only. That note, the bomb, basically.
yeah.
And then in their version, it's like Alfred sees it, And he's like, it's the same handwriting as the note to Batman. So he's like, I'm gonna avoid this, and then like
And
walks away.
Handwriting aside, it's a really suspicious package. Like you'd think he'd be a little more careful.
To a
than
billionaire's home.
Yeah. Plus, that's invasive. It did say it was for Batman's eyes only. Like that's for Batman, not you.
Yeah.
Don't open it.
There's a lot of things wrong with that scene.
Yeah. Oh well, faulty logic and all
That being said, best movie this year, kind of.
So far, I'll say so
Well,
far.
I
we'll
mean,
see,
I don't
we'll
agree,
see.
but
So far, it's only May,
I
or
loved
April.
it. I
It's
don't
only
agree,
April.
but I loved it. We can talk about best movies of the year later.
Yeah, at the end of the year. But yeah, definitely let us know your thoughts on in the comments below if you have any critiques that you think are valid of this movie, or if you have any arguments against critiques that you've heard that kind of, are not valid in your opinion. Let us know in the comments below, and we'll catch you later. Peace.